I had to return my vehicle. Rideshare drivers are struggling to pay their bills amid rising gas prices. I've mentioned it before on this show and other shows. I used to be an Uber and a Lyft driver, drove, both of those as well as all the food delivery stuff, trying to make a living. And one thing I noticed, I drove for all those services for 2 to 3 years. One thing I noticed was the amount of money that those rideshare companies paid went down every year. It was harder and harder to make the same amount of money. And what happens as well is that your vehicle requires maintenance. And when you drive it a lot, requires exponentially more maintenance. And if you own an older car, things just start falling apart. So you struggle. I struggled with not only just making enough to live on my very, very basic lifestyle, just trying to make enough to live on, but I was also trying to somehow pay for the constant maintenance I needed on my car. And when the pandemic happened and everything got shut down, thankfully I was able to collect unemployment, but it was also a sign that that is something that I will never go back to. As far as making money, maybe if it's like a very much like a side job, you just want some extra money, but trying to do it full time or part time is a ridiculous idea. Just like, unless you have a newer car that is extremely reliable and gas efficient, it is not worth it whatsoever. And I can't imagine how much less the drivers are making today, considering the trend was making less doing those things. A lot less bonuses, a lot less benefits, a lot less, like, there used to be deals where you get like percentages off on maintenance stuff and like tires and all these kinds of things. All those things kind of went away gradually to where just everything became more expensive and you'd also make less. Meanwhile, the company's raking in all of their fees. They're just raking in and probably raising prices on the passenger side as well, where the drivers probably aren't seeing any of that. You know, the companies won. You know, they tried to pass a law stating that people that worked for these companies would be considered employees. But because these companies just pumped ridiculous amounts of money into their propaganda, trying to confuse voters into thinking it was a bad idea for people who get paid by companies to receive benefits, is ridiculous. So that didn't pass. One of the things that did not pass in this past presidential election. And that was right around, I mean, that happened right before the pandemic, really. Like the November before is when that didn't pass in California, but thankfully, despite the fact they're not considered employees, thankfully, because of the pandemic, at least drivers were able to collect unemployment if they weren't safe to drive. Because for sure, everybody that drove during the pandemic, if you decided to or didn't get approved for unemployment for whatever reason, because it wasn't an easy process, like I'm sure people who drove would have gotten it multiple times by now. But yeah, as far as gas prices, no shit. It was becoming impossible under the pre-pandemic situation to make money doing that. It was getting less and less, like spending the same amount of time, driving the same amount of miles, working and getting paid less and less every year. And then you add on top of that just less people going out because the pandemic is still going on and there's still a group of people that are working from home or just not willing to go out as much as they were. So business in general is going to be less. A lot of events get canceled a lot of the times, and those events bring a lot of opportunity for these drivers. But all of that And then you add on the fact that gas is now $3 more a gallon. That just, I'm sure. And all these companies, they do the bare minimum to make it people think that they care about people. They don't care about people. They only care about profit. Like Uber and Lyft, these are app companies. They're not car companies. They don't give you your car. You use your own car. You're just using their app as a driver to get rides and process payments. That's it. They don't offer you anything else. And all of the money that they take is just for that app to run. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, of course, they're doing these, apparently, so let me read this. For rideshare drivers across the country, rising gas prices in recent months have pushed already precarious financial conditions towards a breaking point, leaving some to search for other jobs. Rideshare drivers operate under daily uncertainty over how much money they'll have coming in and whether it will be enough to cover basic necessities. As customer demand, traffic congestion, and gas prices oscillate, sometimes without warning. What cost me, quote unquote, what cost me $60 last week is now costing me $90 this week, said Ben Valdez, who drives for Uber and Lyft in Los Angeles, where per gallon rates reached $5.89 in March. Uber and Lyft started temporary surcharges to help drivers balance the extra charge, but drivers have characterized the actions as insufficient. Basically, what Uber and Lyft did is they didn't pay drivers more. They just charged riders more, which pisses the riders off, right? Makes them unhappy at the company, and then a representative of that company as a driver picks them up. So they're probably also getting low ratings from customers, low tips from customers, and just overall customers with bad attitudes because now they're being charged. That extra cost is being passed on to them. Meanwhile, I'm sure Uber and Lyft, their profits have only increased. Right? Uber and Lyft are not paying drivers more. Uber and Lyft just forced the price hike, and I'm sure they take a slice out of it. Whatever these quote-unquote surcharges are. I would not be surprised if Uber and Lyft take a percentage out of this surcharge that they charge the customer, but they're just passing it on to the customer. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care about the drivers. There's always going to be drivers. They'll lure new drivers in with some like wording of some bonus that seems like really cool, but if you break it down, it's pretty pointless. Turnover rates of those gig jobs are ridiculous. I'm sure. I'm very rare for people to stick around because the longer you do it, the more you realize these companies just pay you less and less. And just remove any benefits, all of the things. Like if you were driving with Uber like a decade ago, you're making so much money. You were actually making really good money. Not really good. You're making good money. And they gave you good benefits and bonuses and things like that. And if you hit this goal, you get this thing. And then they just slowly, over the years, just strip that stuff away. I don't know if Uber was around 10 years ago, but whenever the early years of Uber, when they were trying to make the business popular and trying to make it seem like a cool thing to do to make money. But yeah, I'm not at all surprised that that's just what's going to happen. If it's not a viable way for people to make money, then they're not going to do it. Only the most desperate people are going to do it, and it's going to be for a short amount of time, and you're going to see instances of crazy shit happening. Because when you have desperate people trying to make money, they're looking for every scam in the book to try and take advantage of somebody. So if they're not going to be paid a good amount to be driving people, then they're using that as a reason to add extra things to potential scams that they're doing. So if this continues, gas prices, if these Uber and Lyft companies just keep paying less and less, eventually it's going to go bad. And it's going to fail. There's going to be a tipping point where the customer perception of Uber and Lyft is going to be never drive with those companies. It's bad drivers. They're always trying to scam you. They charge like crazy, but then like nobody gets paid except for the CEOs and VPs of those companies. So it's profit over people, always. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.